Hey there, folks. Welcome. This morning I got a haircut, and I said to my barber, "Hey, guess who I'm going to interview today? General Flynn." My barber was freaked out. General Flynn? I said, "Yeah, General Flynn. They're doing a reboot of Miami Vice, and he's starring in that, and he's on the set of Miami Vice right now." General Flynn, welcome.
That's right. Hey, Eric, how you doing? And again, it's great to be back on your show and speaking to your wonderful audience.
I got to tell you, you're in the position, you're one of those people who give a lot of us out here a lot of hope. So we love you, we respect you, and we're just grateful to God for you doing what you're doing. So I want to talk to you about anything and everything that's going on right now. It's hard to know where to start, frankly. So let me just ask you, what's on the top of your mind with where we are in the nation?
Yeah, well, I think that, first of all, again, it is a wonderful opportunity to speak with you, Eric, and your great audience. I think the first thing that comes to my mind this morning, after spending the last 4 days thinking about the founding of our country, especially yesterday, and really reflecting on why we are the way we are and who we are as a nation. I think the sobering reality is that evil exists, and it exists all around us. And I think that people need to understand that, well, they need to understand that evil exists. And there are competing ideologies that we are always opposing forces. And those competing ideologies today really have to do with this idea of globalism. It's more than just communism and socialism and fascism and imperialism and all the isms, right? All the ideological factors that exist out there. It's really about freedom, and that's really who we are as a nation, and we're the last bastion of freedom on the planet right now. That's very clear. There is no doubt about that. Versus this idea of global, the sort of the globalists that are out there. This small group, and I say small. There's a fair number of them at an elite level, but this small group of elite globalists who absolutely and firmly believe in their convictions for the way that they want to take this world, Eric, are very real. And it's the World Economic Forum, and there's other aspects of that. But this is a very real period of history where, frankly, the world is competing, the freedom-loving world, which we are the pointy end of that spear. The United States of America is the pointy end of that spear and have been for almost 250 years now. But we are competing against this group of people that wants to, and I'm not gonna mince words. They want to enslave society. And they want to enslave societies, plural. So, there was a time, I don't know, probably back in the early '60s, where there was a Russia and China split. Okay, and the split occurred because China went in a direction that was sort of what they called communism with Chinese characteristics. Okay, and Russia was still the dominant Chinese, or the dominant communist ideology, the dominant communist nation on the planet. Well, now I hear people talking about America being essentially a communist or socialist state with American characteristics. I mean, there are people in our government that are talking like this.
So, well, yeah. To be clear, to kind of clarify. I mean, you're doing a great job of that. But we've never faced anything like this, ladies and gentlemen, in the history of the world. This is not the American founders' vision versus George III. This is the American founders' vision against a variety of globalist forces. We're talking about the communist Chinese in bed with George Soros and Klaus Schwab and elites all around the world who are at war with the idea of freedom as given to us by the founders 247 years ago. So this is an existential crisis, General Flynn. This is like a war where if we don't win this war, it's game over. And that's why it's so good to have you on, because you're one of the few people who understands this. We've got a lot of just buffoon rhino moderates who are happy to play patty cake with the devil. They don't care. Either they don't get it or they have sold their souls. And so you and a handful of people really get it.
Well, I saw, so I'm glad you used that phrase, sold their soul. I mean, there's an awful lot of people in our federal government and elected officials and way down. So now what we've learned, Eric, is from the top level of our federal government, not just, Joe Biden in the White House, but Republicans that are in Congress and principally in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. But it permeates all the way down into our culture. So, when we talk about the idea of intellectual, physical, emotional, and definitely spiritual, those sort of components of warfare. And there's also this other one, I would just call it a cultural war. And this idea of, having the past month of transgender Pride Month, right? I mean, where we're just having this culture that is so indifferent to what we are and who we are as Americans.
It is a war. I'm gonna stop you there. We're gonna go to a break. It's a war on reality, and it's a rage against God. We'll be right back talking to General Flynn.
Yep.
Folks, welcome back. Talking to General Flynn. General Flynn, you were just talking about, you're framing this for us. And I think one of the beautiful things is that evil has so overreached. The authoritarians have so overreached. They've been triggered by Trump, triggered by all kinds of stuff. So in a sense, they have exposed themselves. They've come out of the bushes, and we can see them in a way we'd never seen them before, because and I know they've always been there. There's no more evil in the world today than there was 20 years ago. It's just that now it's out in the open. Now, patriots and freedom lovers are realizing, I need to go to war with this. I need to do my part because we are losing our nation. Children's lives are being destroyed. But this has not been out in the open until recently.
Yeah, and I think that what's real and when we look back at like the 2020 election and where we are and sort of who's in charge of the country, all that, what evil, a weakness in evil, okay, a weakness in evil is arrogance. It's like people can go look up the 7 deadly sins, right? I mean, pride, right, as a deadly sin, right? But the weakness of evil is arrogance. And one of the things that, as you just really articulated so well, is this idea of exposure. So the evil that we are presented with, and that is presenting itself to us now, it's so overwhelming, and they have had to expose themselves in such just incredible ways, and this level of arrogance that we see, where it's like you're just going to accept this because we say so. And now I call it inside of the American DNA, inside of the DNA of every single American that is really, when we think about what is an American, right? And we just were reminded over these last 4 days of Independence Day weekend, we were just reminded, again, about who we are. We're a constitutional republic. We were founded by some really brave people, men and women, and they stood up when they knew that they were up against a wall. They knew at that time they were up against something that was so powerful, so strong. And at the time they said, we've got to do this. So now America, now folks, now audience, we are now standing up in another period of history, totally unprecedented. And it is now a place where we're looking at our own government has been occupied, it's been occupied by a bunch of people, for the most part, that are owned by others. And when I say owned by others, that means that they are deep, they have, deep in their pockets, hands that are down into their pants or their jackets, and they are given things that they have accepted. And what that has done is that has changed them from being what they're supposed to be, which is driving, home the idea of law, driving home the idea of justice, driving home the idea of standing up for courage and standing up for accountability. And we have not had We have not been in a place like this, Eric. So now what is happening, and to put it into a more positive light, the American people are now standing up and saying enough is enough. We have had enough of this, and we are not going to allow the country to continue to go down this path. But I do believe, and looking at it from sort of a faith-based perspective, I do believe that it's like God has said to us, I'm gonna put you through this. I'm going to put you through this ugly process where you're gonna see who actually stands up, who actually comes to your aid, right? And I think that it's like something that I learned in the years going through all the persecution that I went through. Friends that you never knew existed show up to your side and are ready to go to war with you. Where people that you knew, who you thought were your friends, they're nowhere to be seen. And you really understand it's not just loyalty to a fault. It's actually people who understand and have a passion, have compassion for what it is that you're going through. Well, now America, we're going through this, and you're going to find which political leaders are ready to stand up and fight for our country because they're elected. You're going to find local leaders in your churches, in your schools, in your communities who are going to stand up, and they're going to be fighting for us at the local level. I use this phrase, local action has a national impact. So we are now in a place where we the people now have to get better organized. And one of the things that I do see is I see a lot of these grassroots movements, and I've been all over the country now, blessed to have gone all over the country and talked to large groups of these people, leaders. These are leaders, and a lot of them are women. I mean, there's a lot of women out there who are taking responsibility, not just for their children, but they're taking responsibility for their communities. And in some cases, taking responsibilities for their entire state. And they're not politically connected. They're not wealthy. They are just people who are saying enough is enough. So as an American, as I stand here today and I talk to you, I actually see light at the end of the valley of the shadow of death, right? Psalm 23, because that's kind of where America is at. And what they want us to do, what the globalist elite crowd want us to do is they want us to come to the end of that valley and fall into the trap that they have sprung for us, right? But we can see the trap now. It's like an ambush. You know that you're walking into an ambush. Well, I know, and I'm telling people, we're walking into an ambush, and we've been talking about this for a long time. And so people now know we're walking into an ambush. So when you see that exit, make sure that it's the exit that is based on your God-given common sense, the values and the principles that this country was founded upon, and some level of accountability. That's all America wants. People want accountability. And people are willing to accept those people who come forward and say, you know what, I've screwed up, forgive me. People will forgive. But we don't forget. We do not forget. And so now we're going into a place here. We have about another year plus, right? We've got let's say 16 months or so to where we walk into another very important light, and that light is 2024 election. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you today that is there a scenario where it doesn't even happen? You're damn right. There's a scenario where it doesn't even happen. That's a discussion for another day.
Okay, no, I want to ask you about that. I want to ask you what lies ahead. I want to ask you about your thoughts on President Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, we're just privileged to have our friend General Flynn as my guest. We'll be right back. I'm talking to General Flynn. General Flynn, you're talking about what lies ahead. We've never been through anything like this. A lot of patriots have been activated because of the evil that has become so obvious. Yeah. And a lot of people are getting activated. The worse things get, the more we hear about the election, about this White House, about vaccine stuff that was suppressed, about social media giants crushing freedom of speech. More people are waking up every single day. What are your thoughts on President Trump going forward? It's my personal conviction that because he was robbed of the previous election, that he needs to be able to do what he could do now. that he didn't understand in his first term, because it was impossible. I mean, I literally sat next to you the morning of the inauguration in that church across from the White House. And I remember just thinking how happy I was that this nation was in the hands of patriots. But at that time, you, President Trump, and many others did not know what the deep state had been planning and the traps that they had laid. The point is, now you know. Now he knows. Now we know. So what do you see going forward?
So number one, prior to the election and the election itself, this is 2024 now. I'm going to start using the phrase "guarding the vote." Guarding the vote. So as a military guy, as a warrior, as a general, you have to plan and you have to put together and pull together all the resources that you have. And we're doing that. We're doing that across the country. I was just recently with President Trump, probably about 2.5 weeks ago, and we talked about this idea about guarding the vote, because it's a really important aspect of what we need to do, because we own the vote, right? The American people own the entire voting system, even though we've been told, you don't. And we've been actually told by different elements of our own government, to include the judiciary, you don't own the vote. This is something that is over here. But in fact, everything that we do with our vote belongs to us. It's a taxpayer-funded system. It's an incredible privilege and honor that we have to vote. So we're going to have to guard the vote. And guarding the vote means everybody weighing in and standing together from the moment whatever state you're in, because each state has its own, places to be, like ballot harvesting and mail-in votes and day of voting and all that. But we're going to have to be guarding the vote. Now, so that's a very, very important phrase, guarding the vote, because it means keeping an eye on every single aspect of the vote that we have from the moment it starts, whether it's 45 days or 30 days prior to the vote, all the way through the counting. The second thing is, let's assume victory. Okay, I'm going to assume victory. We get back into office, President Trump wins again and gets back into office. He is going to have to continue to do the things that he did economically and from a foreign policy standpoint, because they were wonderful. He had incredible successes economically and certainly foreign policy. I mean, no first president in my lifetime that never started a war. But I think that the other component of this is we are going to have severe, and I use that word not lightly, we're going to have severe government reform. Severe government reform, and that means going inside of these organizations and basically, in some cases just ripping whole cloth out, in other cases completely changing what their structure, their mission.
Oh no! This is so huge. We're going to go to a break. We're going to carry over with General Flynn. This is huge. We gotta open this up when we come back. We'll be right back with General Flynn. Folks, welcome back. This is hour 2. We continue the conversation with General Flynn. General Flynn, you were just saying some big stuff, and we're going to have to, you said, let's assume victory. Now, again, we can't assume victory, but assuming victory, as we war game this through here, let's say we get enough citizens to guard the vote. We're on to the tricks. We understand that the Democrats now win elections by stealing elections. It is ugly. It's hard to face that in America we've come to this place, but if you don't face it, you're a fool. So we face it. We deal with it. We do what needs to be done. And assuming that Trump were to get into office, the idea would be, you were just saying this, we have to have major, utterly unprecedented in our lifetime government reform. We have seen the horror. It's like you buy a house and now you know the termites are eating this beam, and this is happening and that's happening. We need to rip this stuff out. The deep state, as we now know because of what happened to you, has taken over the government that belongs to we the people. In order to get our government back in the most fundamental sense, how do we get rid of those forces in the deep state that are at war with freedom.
Yeah.
They're at war with we the people that are militarized politically against what Trump represents, because it's not Trump, it's what he represents. It is we the people, it is the founders' vision. They're at war with that. They're in bed with the globalist elites who don't give a tinker's damn about America on the founders' vision. So what would we need to do, and how would we do it?
Yeah, I mean, what they're at war with is our Constitution. I mean, these people want to change they want to get rid of our Constitution. So I mean, a couple of things. There are people in government who just need to be told, thank you for your service. When you go into your office tomorrow, I want you to clean your desk out and turn your badge in and go home and go find a job someplace else. Thank them, but because there's a lot of secretaries, there's a lot of bureaucrats at the lower levels who they're just sort of following along and doing the thing. But there are entire departments that we need to be, that when in some cases shut down, like Department of Education.
Goodbye.
I'll tell you,
goodbye to the Department of Education.
I mean, Jimmy Carter is the one that created the Department of Education. It's a complete disaster. That would be one of the first places.
I actually thought it was Richard Nixon who did that. You might be right, but it was a naive time in American politics.
That's one of those places you close the door on. The second thing is that, and they're really, and all these things that I'm talking about are simultaneous, and these are not that difficult to do. The other couple of places are the federal component, so Washington D.C. component of the Department of Justice. Okay, I know the complete makeup of that organization. It doesn't mean that we shut down the attorneys generals around the country, but the structure inside of Washington D.C. That particular, I mean, I'm going to tell you, there's some parts of that organization that just need to be shut down and go away. The Department of Defense. The Department of Defense, inside the Department of Defense, I mean, the numbers are staggering, and I won't get into all the numbers, but the mission of the Department of Defense is to prepare for, fight, and win our nation's wars. And the key word there is win, not participate in these endless wars that these rhinos and there's neoliberals and there's neocons, right? On both sides, they love these wars, and that's what Eisenhower warned about when he talked about the military-industrial complex. So those are three big departments, and there are some other components of departments. We also have agencies, activities, and commissions, as well as the intelligence community, right? Because I really haven't, when I talk about like the FBI as an example, the FBI is a component of the Department of Justice. It's a subordinate organization. I mean, the FBI is another organization that could be completely shut down. It is not in our Constitution. We have 900,000 law enforcement professionals around this country. We have them we still have them in the federal level. I mean, Secret Service and Marshal Service, but we have states and local and city police forces that do wonderful work, and they absolutely can't stand having the FBI show up and say, we're the FBI and we're in charge. So the FBI is another component within the Department of Justice, particularly in Washington, D.C., that needs to be completely shut down.
I mean, that's a big thing. That's a big thing. Before you go on, I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen, that is a big thing. That will be hard to do. But I have been calling on Twitter for over a year, defund the FBI. Don't defund the police. Defund the FBI. They are a rogue organization. They're out of control. They were in many ways bad news under Hoover, who was a power monger, unelected, but they did a lot of good work. A lot of the guys, the main guys who were doing the work did good work. But we have seen what has become of the FBI, and we need to take radical action.
I mean, the FBI, to be simplistic, the FBI used to have really good cops. Now they've become known as thugs, and that's not a good place to be. So those are a couple of bins within the federal government. And I think that the other big piece is the intel community, right? The intel community, which I have a lot of knowledge of. And inside of the intel community, we have got to break this marble up, okay? This big marble up. And the main, what they used to call them, agates, right? The agates, the big agate marbles. The big one is the CIA. And the CIA is culturally so corrupt, and intellectually, frankly, it's not that good. they have not been right about anything that we have been fighting in for probably the last 30 years. And in fact, many cases, they have caused some of these wars, these endless wars that we were involved in. And it really does go back to a guy like JFK, who rose up. And JFK, I was listening to some videos of him this morning, and I'm thinking to myself, God, this man would be a diehard Republican today, be a diehard conservative today, thinking what we now know the CIA has done. And this is principally the CIA, because there's other elements of our intel agencies that do fine work, but they've also grown too big. So again, what we're going to need, and frankly, it doesn't really require Congress to say, well, we're not going to give you this money or that money. No, the executive authority of the President of the United States, with executive power granted to him or her by the Constitution of the United States of America, gives the full authority for the President of the United States to make any decisions that they want about the executive branch of the United States government. So all these things that I'm talking about are all doable. What it's going to take is it's going to take courage. It's going to take, it's going to take a bold group of people like the founders were early on in an administration, and you just start to say, again, you start to close the doors, literally lock the doors, and you tell people, thank you for your service. We're going to give you a 30-day stipend or a 60-day stipend. I mean, we can do these things.
But this is why we got final segment coming up with General Flynn right now, right after the break. But I want to say, General Flynn, this is why they needed to take you out, and they needed to take out Trump, because they knew that it was game over. You know where the bodies are buried. You know what needs to be done. They will not let this happen. They will do everything and anything. They will steal elections. They will lie. They have done these things. They will do these things worse, because the level of desperation on their part, they see when you say stuff like this, they know it is absolutely anything goes. They will do anything, including put a bullet in the head of anybody they don't like, as they did with JFK. We are in a war. It's ultimately a spiritual war, folks. We need to pray for this nation. Stand strong. We'll be right back. Final segment with General Flynn. Folks, welcome back. Perhaps you think I'm being dramatic, histrionic, hyperbolical. I wish I were. We're talking to General Flynn. General Flynn, it's heartening to hear you talk, because you understand what is at stake. And I want to reiterate that the reason they knew they had to take you out early on in the Trump administration, because they had to hobble the forces of we the people. They knew that if you were going to be in there, that it was going to be bad. They knew that if Trump were able to do anything that he wanted to do, it was going to be bad for them. So they hobbled him and did everything they could do. We now know everything that they did. We now see it's laid out what they did. It is dramatically treasonous behavior on the part of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and whoever else was involved. I don't believe Biden will finish out his term. I believe that behind the scenes, they're going to get rid of him based on the level of corruption that's being exposed right now. And I don't know if they're going to slip in Gavin Newsom or, Beelzebub himself if he's available. What do you see going forward in terms of possibilities?
Yeah. So I agree with what you just said about Biden not finishing out his term. I think that they're looking for all kinds of ways right now, and I do believe that they have a plan to basically have him and Kamala step down. But there's an interesting thing in the Constitution about choosing a president. So if Kamala becomes the president for a day, then they can actually, it doesn't mean that the Speaker of the House comes in. They can actually choose a person in the interim to be able to come in as the vice president, and then now she steps down. So it's an interesting constitutional process, and people need to go and really dig into that part of our Constitution for the transition of power in the event that a sitting president leaves, okay, for whatever reason, because, for family reasons, right? So one of the things, and I want to take it back to the beginning, Eric, of our conversation at the beginning. Arrogance has exposed their evil. Arrogance has completely exposed their evil. But I want people to understand that evil is very powerful. So evil has a very powerful, aroma, if you will, and that power comes from position, it comes from wealth, and it comes from a spiritual part of our existence that, and I'm not a preacher, but I'm going to stand here and just tell you that what I feel. It comes from a part of our existence where we are apathetic, or we're lazy, or we just feel like, somebody else is going to do it, right? Well, that's why we are where we are, because we have always said, that's those politicians, this is, somebody else will do it, right? Somebody else will get off the couch. Somebody else will step off the curb and get into the way of what's coming. Somebody else will do that. No, folks, you have to do it. We have to do it. If we're going to take this country back, we have to do everything that we can humanly do. And on a given day, like today, I don't know if my priorities are exactly aligned with what I should be doing, but I basically follow my heart. I follow a direction that I feel I need to follow. That's me. That's the way I prioritize my life. And I'm now asking every single American, you now have to figure out what your new purpose in life is, because whatever it wasn't working. You raised great families, you made some money, you live in a nice community, you go to a nice church. But folks, we are very near the end of our existence as a nation, as a constitutional republic, if we don't take this thing back. And so that means that every single person in every single community around this country has to decide what their destiny will be, because the destiny that people choose today will determine the outcome of this country in a very short period of time, maybe a year and a half from now. And so if we don't gain, so physically, right? Physically here on earth, if we don't gain control of our government, we don't gain it back here in 2024, then we're looking at a completely different, we're looking at a different set of circumstances that now and the scenarios that we could potentially have are scenarios that are unimaginable to most. I can imagine them, but they're unimaginable to most, where you start looking at a country that basically like an old cloth, it starts to fray and it starts to come apart. And that's possible if we allow ourselves to continue to go down the path that we're on.
Oh, yes. No, it's not possible. It's going to happen. Listen, you said it before. We've been so blessed in this country that we took our eyes off the ball. We did not realize there is evil at war with everything that we have. And we thought, well, I don't need to do anything. We lost sight of the fact. Listen, if you think, World War II, people understood, if I don't do my little part, if I don't make sure my blackout curtains are covered up, if I don't do my part, plant a victory garden, we could lose, and the Nazis will take over and they will crush us. Evil will come to our shores, will destroy us, will harm us. We need to know what can happen. And I really think in our generation, we've lost sight. We thought everything will always be okay, and we need to be aware that there are forces of evil that are extremely real. And as you just said, if every single American doesn't understand his or her part in fighting in this war against globalist tyranny, we will lose everything. But you said it before also, that we've seen all these bad things have happened to wake people up, to make us understand that, well, I would say God allowed these things to happen, to wake up those who could be awakened, to go to the barricades, to stop sipping their coffee or tea and pretending that everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, I learned this a couple of years ago when somebody came to me that was really trying to help me. And, they said, remember that God chose Israel, America chose God. So, and again, I probably have become more faith-based in my life than I ever have been prior, even though I always was somebody who, understood, and I grew up as in a Catholic family, that was always a practicing Catholics in our family growing up as as one of 9 kids. But when I heard that phrase about America chose God, and then what the person then walked me through was very, very smart, biblically wise person, walked me through how we have forgotten that. And what that means is when you go back to the Declaration of Independence, right? The Declaration of Independence, really, where we talk about the laws of nature and of nature's God, right? We talk about the Creator. We talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We have been given so much in our nation, particularly over the last 50 years. You speak of World War II. We were handed, my father was a veteran of World War II and Korea. My parents handed us on a silver platter a beautiful country and said, go work hard, be good to others, golden rule, and just be a good person and work hard and you're going to do just fine. Well, now we've been doing that and we have lost sight. We've lost sight of it. And I am not going to stand here and turn over to my kids or my grandkids that same silver platter that's so tarnished. It's so tarnished. It's got some dings in it. It's bent. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, no way. I got to clean this thing up. I got to fix this. I got to fix those indentations. I've got my generation, and my generation is right now the oldest generation in this country. If you look at that thirds, right? Like you have my grandchildren, and then you have children, and then you have me, right? And I represent probably actually a large body of millions and millions of Americans who understand what it is that I'm talking about right now, but they don't know what to do. So what I'm asking them to do is to find a place in their own communities and get involved and start to challenge every single thing you see. Don't let people go, oh, well, this is going to be just fine. This politician's doing great. We love this. Everybody loves their local person. Everybody loves their politician. Hey, don't become enamored by these people. Only become enamored by one thing, and that is our faith, and that's our faith in God. Become enamored by that, because when that happens, when that return comes, we're going to all of a sudden go, holy crap, this is for real. Because, folks, this is for real. We are in a real world situation, and we are at a moment of historic crisis, and the media and the people in the White House, people in the federal government, they're going to tell you, nothing to see here. Don't worry about it. We'll take good care of you. Well, that's not what we want. Freedom requires sacrifice, it requires commitment, and it requires a discipline and a perseverance that you have to have on a daily basis.
Well, we are just so proud of you and the efforts you're making and the clarity with which you see what is happening, because you've been through it. And you're one of the people I believe God has chosen to help carry the rest of us through this. General Flynn, thank you. God bless you. Folks, this is your daily reminder to please go to mypillow.com or mystore.com, and to get huge savings, use the code ERIC. If you don't believe me, here's some celebrity friends.
Mama said to use the code ERIC.
Use the code ERIC.
Eric.
Thank you very much.